So when I say Bhutan, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably these serene monasteries, incredible Himalayan landscapes, and of course, that unique idea of gross national happiness. It's a really powerful image, one that's been carefully crafted, but today we're going to peel back the layers on a much more complex story. We're diving into two completely different sources that paint two, well, pretty much irreconcilable pictures of the very same nation. So let's start with the story that Bhutan wants to tell the world.
And really, there's no better way to get a handle on that vision than to hear it straight from Bhutan's Prime Minister, Dashut Sheringtubgai, speaking at the UN General Assembly. This quote right here, it gets to the very heart of Bhutan's international identity. It's all about positioning the country as a leader with a different, more holistic way of thinking about what progress even means.
Okay, so that sounds great, right? But what does that vision actually look like in practice? Well, it kicks off with a pretty ambitious call for global reform. This isn't Bhutan acting like a quiet, isolated kingdom. This is them stepping up as a proactive player on the world stage.
And look, the message was bold. It was direct. The Prime Minister essentially said that the UN, as it exists today, just isn't cutting it. Bhutan is calling to strengthen the UN's ability to actually act on the world's biggest issues, from global peace to climate change. They want to make the institution, in their words, fit for the purpose of our collective future.
And this wasn't just some vague, fluffy statement. They got really specific with their proposals. Bhutan is explicitly backing a major overhaul of the UN Security Council. They're talking about expanding both the permanent and non-permanent seats to bring in nations like India and Japan. The argument is pretty simple. The council has to reflect the world as it is today, not the world of 80 years ago.
But it's not just about shaking up global institutions. Bhutan's vision also puts them front and center as a leader on two of our most urgent challenges, the climate crisis and the future of our cities.
The Prime Minister really laid out this huge paradox we're all facing. Think about it. Our cities are the engines of the global economy. We're talking over 80% of GDP. But at the same time, they're responsible for more than 70% of carbon emissions. And with almost 70% of all of us expected to be living in cities by 2050, that's a problem we absolutely have to solve.
So what's Bhutan's big idea? Well, it's not about ditching cities altogether. It's about completely reinventing them. They propose something called the Gellifu Mindfulness City, a city designed from the ground up to heal and sustain, all built on renewable energy and those core values of gross national happiness. It's a seriously bold experiment and maybe, just maybe, a model for the rest of the world.
And look, this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky dream. It is backed by a pretty incredible fact. Bhutan is one of only 4 countries on the entire planet that is carbon neutral. Actually, it's better than that. It's carbon negative, absorbing 5 times more carbon than it puts out. That kind of track record, well, it gives their call for global climate action some serious moral authority.
And just to double down on this whole idea of being a promoter of harmony, Bhutan announced that it's going to host a global peace prayer festival, bringing together spiritual leaders from all over the world. It's kind of the final piece of this image they're projecting, a small nation with a huge, positive vision for the future of our planet.
It's an incredibly inspiring narrative, isn't it? Super polished. A story of hope, of sustainability, of peace. It's the kind of story you want to believe. But as we start to dig into our other source, we find a completely different perspective, a counter-narrative that challenges basically everything we've just heard.
And that brings us to this quote from a document that, well, it flips the script completely. It argues that behind all those polished speeches at the UN, there's a bitter truth, a reality of injustice that, it claims, the world just can't afford to ignore anymore.
So this second narrative, it's not looking outward at the world stage. Oh no, it's looking right back inside Bhutan's own borders. And it's not a story of global leadership, it's one of alleged domestic oppression with some really severe accusations that stand in direct opposition to that image of a peaceful, happy kingdom.
And right at the heart of this counter-narrative is a truly shocking number. This source alleges that a full 1/3 of Bhutan's population has been forced into exile, stripped of their homes, their country. Just let that sink in for a second. 1/3. It's a number that completely reframes how you might see the nation.
And the allegations don't stop there. The document goes on to paint a picture of a state where the media is silenced, where dissent just isn't tolerated, and where dozens of political prisoners are, in its words, still rotting in jails. It also claims that beneath that shiny veneer of national happiness, you'll find the grim reality of stark poverty and deep inequality.
So, What do we do with this? How do we even begin to reconcile these two stories? We're left with these completely opposite portrayals of the exact same country, and each one is presented with absolute conviction. On one hand, a global visionary. On the other, a state that oppresses its own people.
And when you put them right next to each other like this, wow, the conflict is just impossible to ignore. A vision of gross national happiness is met head-on with accusations of stark poverty. A celebrated carbon-negative leader is contrasted with a state that has allegedly exiled a third of its people. It seems like every single positive claim has a dark, troubling counterpoint. The contradiction really couldn't be more profound.
All of this forces us to ask a really difficult question. Can both of these stories somehow be true at the same time? It means we have to move beyond that simple postcard image of Bhutan and confront a far more complicated and deeply contradictory reality.
And this is really the key thing to take away here. This isn't about us deciding which story is the true one. It's about recognizing that both of these narratives exist simultaneously. Bhutan is, at the same time, presented as this global leader in progressive ideas and accused of some deeply repressive practices. Both of these are part of its story now.
And so, this tale of two Bhutans leaves us with one massive, critical question. What does happiness actually mean on the world stage? If a nation can promote it globally while allegedly a third of its own people are in exile, it forces us to completely reconsider how we measure success itself. And maybe more importantly, it makes us ask, whose story gets to become history and whose is simply erased?